you guys got that. This is not my rule. So Finn, just to make sure you signed it, I'm going over the rules. So I'm doing this rule. I didn't say yes, more, less, or the same if someone plays less. I didn't say that. You guys said that. So this is your rule. This is not my rule. If you decide to sit out, then you have to play less. And I didn't decide that. Right? And a lot of people contributed to the last goal. I think like 6 players. Abraham started it, and then a lot of you guys added on and made it even better.
I know one.
And I didn't add on to it. All right, hold on. So the first rule, man, come on, man. That right there, that would have been one. That's one strike. Remember?
Oh,
remember?
Yeah,
that's one strike. Lena's gonna learn today.
That's good.
So these are the rules.
Quarter of a game.
So this is the rules. If a player decides to not do a drill and sit out, they should play less time.
Yeah. And you just...
No, this is the one for Landon. And Landon, I didn't come up with the rule. Landon, your whole team came up with the rule. This is Landon. He got strike 1.
How dare you?
Landon, if a player does not focus 3 times in a drill or when the coach talks, you sit out for 1/2.
If it's
6 times in a full, 6 times is a full game. 2 times, and you sit out for a quarter of a game, so half of a half. So you're at 1.
What if
No, 1 is a warning.
One is just a warning. I've won.
2 is a half of a half. 3, you don't play for a whole half, and that's your team did that, not me. That's on up here.
And if you talk while the coach
Hey, not that close. So Assam or Landon, your team made up these rules, so don't get mad at me. And I love this. This is how you guys are becoming leaders without me. Okay?
My name is Davis, and I'm Kevin's assistant. Look, don't get soft here. Everything we tell you is transparent, so if you get your feelings hurt, it's on you. If you think Kevin is straightforward, then pray to the Lord that I'm not your coach. You wouldn't last a day with me. You'll be seeing me quite a bit. Pay attention to these leadership gems. Here's some solid advice to use for your teams.
You know what the problem with your rules is? They suck. You're the only one who thinks they're cool. You're the only one who thinks they make sense. If you've ever worked at a corporation, a company with tons and tons of people, you know those rules that lack common sense. And that's because the people making the rules are not on the ground. You need to think about this in your case. Think about the situation that your players are in. By now, they probably know the team's goal. And now's the time to give them autonomy. They don't need you anymore. You've spent enough time setting up the ground rules. They know what to do.
Hold on real quick. I feel like I have to interject here. If you want to be a true leader, I mean a real leader, as in a leader that creates leaders, you gotta drop your ego. Leave it at the door. Man, your big mouth won't allow anyone else space to develop as a leader if you're yapping all the time.
So give your team an opportunity to erase your rules and create rules for the team by themselves. Create a setting, a time that you allow them to come up with the rules for the team. Start with 1 rule, then 2 rules, then 3 rules. Now let's get practical. The first step you can do in making this a reality is getting your team together and letting them know that they can make the rules and that you will intentionally not create any of the rules. This is the most important thing you can do. You have to make a commitment to not create any of the rules. Don't even start the process. Don't even start the first word or the first sentence or the first idea. You may give ideas or examples of other places and other rules that other places come up with, and you may lay down some basic ground rules, but it is very important that you do not actively create any rule. Not by a word, not by a sentence. You can give words, you can give examples, but don't create the rules.
I can see it now. Some of you have already failed. You've already failed. We're telling you exactly what to do, and all you can think about is how your players are going to get anything done without your genius, unprecedented advice on how the team should run. Do you really think all great ideas generate from you? For many of you chumps, the hardest thing you'll have to do is knowing how to shut up.
What you can do as a coach is manage the process of setting goals. And what this means is that as the team is creating goals and setting goals for themselves, you make sure that the goals that they have make sense. Make sure they're realistic. Make sure they're not getting out of touch. In some cases, you may help to create boundaries for these goals. Sometimes they go too far. What you can also do is, while they are creating these rules, make sure that each player who wants to contribute is able to speak. So you want to make sure that you don't have 3, 4, 5 people speaking at the same time. What you do is create order and manage the process. But by no means are you creating the rules. You're managing and keeping order. It is also integral that you constantly remind players to contribute. So if one player comes up with the rule, maybe 2 other players will come up with the rule to help mold it into a better rule, one that makes more sense, one that takes more factors into consideration. But if 3 players, 2 players are contributing, then you have to make sure that more players contribute. Because at the end of the day, this is team rules. This is not 2-3 player rules. And you want every player to be on board. So you have to keep constantly asking, reminding players, hey, you got to contribute. Hey, what do you think? What do you think? What do you think? What do you think? This is something you have to do, because the more that players take ownership in creating the rules, the more pride they will have in sustaining and holding those rules and keeping their word for each rule, because they know that rule was not only made by one person, but I helped refine this rule. And when players know that they contributed to a rule, they take ownership for a rule. And when this is done, there is a better chance that they will stay by this rule, whether you are present or not.
Before we finish this video, I want to emphasize this. Rules need to be created by as many players as possible. Remember this formula. If the number of players who contribute to a rule equals how many players are willing to follow a rule, then the more players that contribute to a rule equals the more players that are willing to follow said rule.
In conclusion, this is a pretty straightforward process. For many of you coaches, this will be so hard to do. But in reality, it's actually very simple. Let the players contribute. And because this is a process that the players are probably doing for the first time, you probably don't want to do all the rules. Start with one rule. Create one good rule. And then with time, you can keep adding rules. But again, this is very simple on your part. The hard part for some of you coaches is just letting your players do the work. your players are smart enough to come up with rules that will help them achieve their goals.